Okay, welcome back, everybody. One thing I thought of there, actually, just as I uploaded that first video, I will also try to put a video length there. One of my perhaps annoyances with the YouTube Premiere is there's no indication of where you are in the video. Like, a Premiere is inherently recorded. They have the whole video, but they don't tell you that it's about to end, or it's going to end in an hour. So that first video was about an hour 18. Presumably we've had a 12-minute break between then and now. And so anyway, that information is there if you want it. But I'm going to continue. I don't think I have any other administrative things. So this is where we were, right? So I had my code. I didn't close that window, did I? No. Okay. I have my HTML page here. It's got whatever it's got going on in the browser's default style. Looks like this. Let's keep talking about some meaning in HTML. Like I said, for me, I think part of the reason I try to sort of push as much semantics as possible into my HTML is not that this browser, this one that's here on my screen, needs it. Fine, I can make pretty crap HTML display in a web browser, but there's more to the world than that, and I'm not in control of it. I feel like sometimes web developers, most of you are going to be too young to remember this page best viewed with Internet Explorer version 4 with this size screen that you would see occasionally on a page, but you don't get to say that. That you can say it if you want, but that's not how the web works. People view your web pages with whatever technology they feel like accessing HTTP with. If you're really an HTTP geek, they tend to use the term user agent. So this web browser that I'm using right now is a user agent. So is, like, if I do this and this, curl is also a user agent that downloads the thing and displays it just on the console. These are equally good ways to retrieve an HTML page. Firefox and curl, and they're all just user agents in a technical sense, and maybe that's why that term gets used. So there's just different situations that markup occurs in. There's reasons to have sort of different style sheets, I guess, like just different styles. Straight up, just things like, even here, like, these are different pages just because I think it's easier to work with them that way. But I could have arranged some sort of JavaScript switch to say, like, okay, well, here's the web page presentation of this content, here's the slide presentation of this content. It's the same HTML. Like, if you look at the HTML that gets delivered to your web browser, in either case, in either one of these versions of this page, the only difference is a little bit of, like, does I don't remember what it's called. Does the slide thing get included? Reveal.js, that's what it's called, or not. It's basically the same markup on either side, effectively with a different style, different behavior controlled by JavaScript. And the reason that some of this stuff works is the markup isn't specific to appearance. Things like a phone screen. I don't want to say things like left and right and top and bottom because I might rearrange those things depending on the screen size. I want to say things like menu, main, those kinds of things that are more semantic. Then I can decide what it looks like in different situations. This can be a thing, right? Just something like SFU at some point decided web pages were going to look this way, that there would be this thing, and titles would have this font and whatever. And then at some point, like, I don't know when this happened, but like at some point SFU decided web pages should look this way. Of course, this has not adapted because frankly, seems like I hate this. I don't like this layout. It's just, there's way too much. Yeah, I know it's more beautiful, but there's just a lot of white space. There's so little information on the screen. But anyway, there's nothing stopping this page from looking more like this page. It's just a question of what style, right? So this will still be a heading. This will still be an unordered list. This will still be an H2. You know, whatever's up here, that will all still be the same. I just would have to be styled differently, right? So this thing, this like breadcrumbs thing that's happening here, this is a realistic thing. Like courses might have to undergo this process at some point. If things have gone well, if you have good semantic markup where things are, you know, well, marked up, I guess, with the with meaning and not appearance, then it's a question of a style sheet change, or maybe a base template that, you know, with a little slightly different surrounding markup, but the core markup isn't going to change, which is great because you don't want to have to change all your markup in this kind of scenario. When this last happened on Courses, this is not the original style sheet that Courses had. This was the other version of SFU's web page design that the second version that we've used. The developer I was working with had taken 470 and seemed surprised that these things that I had said, I don't know, 5 years before to him or whatever, oh geez, that actually worked. Yeah, it could actually work. There are also things back here, like I didn't say, I mean, I said colorblind and implying a different appearance, but I didn't mention like just blind. Like there are speech browsers, like there are web browsers that will read a web page to someone who can't see a web page. That seems like a good thing. It seems like I would like my page to be usable by people who can't see it. That also seems like a good thing. I don't really know how speech browsers work, but what I do have some faith in is that those who create speech browsers will make a paragraph sound like a paragraph and a heading sound like a heading. I think all I can do for a scenario like that, where I just frankly don't have experience, is I can give the most meaningful markup I can and hope that whatever user agent comes along can adapt it into that situation as best possible. Like how I keep trying to find a speech browser and they're all not free and very expensive, so I haven't, but I'm very curious, like how do these web pages sound when they're dictated? Yeah, I keep meaning to do, I should find one, maybe there's an evaluation license I can do a demo or something, but all of these are things that matter, and that you shouldn't ignore. I mentioned this earlier, but just this idea of some kind of automated processing. Again, maybe it's a text-to-speech browser, maybe it's Google. You know, what's Google if not a user agent that is automated? Google is going to come along to this URL at some point, download the content, and try to make sense of it, and try to figure out, like, well, what would somebody need to be searching for to make this a relevant page to send back? And all I can do, like, I don't know how Google works. Like when Google downloads my HTML, I don't know how it processes it. It does something. It somehow tries to figure out what's going on in there. It's surely doing some natural language processing, but we can help it. So again, and content like this, I can say things like, well, there's an H1. So H1 is level 1 heading. That is the sort of main heading for the page. The main heading is web markup and it matches my title. I'm sorry, that size is probably, okay. And then I have an H2 for the next section and another H2 for the next section. So I have these section elements that are, again, dividing my page up into logical subsections. And each one of those subsections has a title. And within the title is some, reasonably semantic markup as best I could, with some classes, like class equals fragment, by the way. Like the reason that's there is for this behavior. So reveal.js, this slide package that I'm using, when you have something class equals fragment, it gets revealed click by click if you want to do that, right? So that piece of markup is there for reveal.js because I want to treat it that way. So I made a sort of a subtype of list item. So, you know, I've done my best on these pages and on pages that I write in general. And maybe this is not a totally wrong way to think about it. Your markup is for Google. Your style sheet is for people. That's probably a really good way to get Google to understand your page. And I think I said this before as well. Like, it's sort of the game with myself of how much meaning can I get into my markup? You know, how can I have markup as best possible describe what's going on in this content, and we'll worry about what it looks like in step 2 here. Okay. I said some stuff back there about the robustness principle. Okay, let's have a look at this page. It looks like that right now. What if I do something wrong, right? So back there, like I had done this, right? So I'd sort of swapped these 2 tags. What if, right? So what if I do this? This is a perfectly normal, like, syntax error sort of thing that, you know, you do sometimes. You know you shouldn't, but you do. We've all had the compiler complain, and it looks exactly the same on the page. The web browser is uploading its end of the robustness principle. It's doing its best to deal with a mistake that I made. But what if, like, what if I, you know, what if I was giving this lecture, I was using Chrome instead of Firefox? Or what if, like, this is it's totally reasonable for one of you who's taking this course to have, like, not a brand new phone, right? A phone that has some kind of janky browser that's a couple years old because that's the last update the mobile carrier or whatever provided to you. How do I know? Like, how do I know how your web browser or anybody else's web browser is going to deal with this mistake? And the answer is I really don't. There's really no way for me to know, and there's certainly no way for me to know how Google will, you know, will Google look at this page and say syntax error, no, I'm not indexing the page? I don't know. You don't know either. So the job of a validator is basically like a syntax checker for HTML, because the browser's not doing that job. So I don't think this is unreasonable. If you hand in C++ code that doesn't compile and you get a 0 on the assignment, I should think you wouldn't be surprised. That seems like a totally reasonable outcome of handing in code that doesn't compile. Why do we not have that expectation for HTML? I think if your HTML is syntactically incorrect, it's wrong, and I will take marks off for it. So the validator is the tool for this. Let's see, I'll go by file upload here. So I can give it a URL. Like, I can check this. I mean, here's, you know, this is, I did not check this before lecture. So let's see. I can give it a URL, have it go. This is what I want. Good. There was a danger to that demo. Or I can, I guess what I want, I can just do this. I can just say, like, copy, paste, check. And probably find an error because I put one there. Or I can do the thing I'm going to do here, which is I'm just going to give it the file. I think that's probably easier. Yep. Okay, so this is, again, like no different than what you would probably expect for like compiler output. It's, yeah, there's an end tag that's closing something that doesn't need to be closed. It's on line 20. Yeah, line 20. Yep. And of course, just like any compiler, yeah. So there's an end tag for body, but I can't end the body yet because the div has to be kind of closed inside of, and I didn't. So, you know, the actual problem is sort of a combination of 1 and 3 here, and you know, the idea of interpreting these is probably not news for you. I think I can just reload. Yeah. Great. Like this again is my hope here. There are various warnings that get told if you don't include them. I think it warns, yeah, like if you don't have a lang attribute, it says, yeah, it's a warning. It's not an error. It's not wrong to fail to include the lang attribute. But why don't you? Like, you know what language you're writing, don't you? So why don't you say so? Like, this page is in English, except the part of it that isn't, that is still hanging around down here somewhere. So everything inside here is in a different language. And I've said that, and I've been nice and honest, and I've included a whole lot of semantics in my markup. It should be valid. So that's also true. And I think people I think understand it when they're writing markup like this in a text editor. But that's not where all markup comes from, right? Some markup is going to be generated like this. Nobody typed this markup, or I mean, if I open up the developer tools here, nobody typed this markup exactly into a text editor. This was generated by something or other. Yeah, see, this is imperfect markup actually, and this this is inherited from SFU. I take no responsibility, but this section, okay, it is a section, class equals main. Probably it could have been an ID equals main because main is unique, but in HTML5, this main element was added, and actually it was added because they did I don't know who they is, the W3C or somebody did a survey of websites. It's okay, what classes and IDs do we see? And they saw things like class equals main or ID equals main because people wanted markup for the main content of their page, not the menu and not the, the logo and the footer that's on every page, the main real content. So this element got introduced, and it just wasn't used in the HTML I say the SFU HTML sort of examples. So it's not on the courses page either, but maybe it could have been. But yeah, so this, where'd it go? This markup? Yeah. This markup that's actually sort of living in my web browser right here, nobody ever typed it, but it still should be valid. And there's a couple ways to deal with that. One of them is, how do I want to view page source. I know it's Control U, and my fingers just type Control U without going through my brain. So there it is, page source. I can, select all, copy, and paste. This is what was sent from the web server to my browser. This should be valid. And it is. So there's a warning here that this section doesn't have heading. Probably sections should have headings, but this one doesn't. But it's valid. It's syntactically legal. So again, this is a markup that was sent to the browser from the server, but you can have some JavaScript code that is modifying the content after it gets to the browser, right? So I might have JavaScript code on this page that takes the original HTML code that was sent and adds some stuff. And if you're using something like React or Vue or Angular or any of these front-end frameworks, a lot of that is going on. The web page that was sent server to browser is almost completely unrelated to what the user's actually looking at. But what the user's actually looking at is in the developer tools, what it was at, F12. Again, something my fingers just do. You can copy this element. It's awkward. I hate how awkward it is because you have to do this. That doesn't get copied, but then you can paste. So that's sort of the complete HTML page as it is currently being displayed in the browser after all the JavaScript client-side modifications, whatever's happened to this page. This is what the user's actually looking at. Is it valid? Yes. With some slight weirdness going on. So interesting. So this was this added? I guess this must have been added dynamically. by, yeah, it was added dynamically. So the MathJax JavaScript library was loaded originally, but then it inserted this thing with some slightly questionable but not incorrect markup. Okay, so there's a chance for invalid markup to happen at that step too. It's all markup that's being given to my web browser. I don't care where it comes from. It should be valid. It should be syntactically legal. I don't think that's too much to ask. Somehow people's brain shuts off as soon as they start generating markup by anything other than a text editor. If you have a template being rendered on the server and sent, it should be valid. If you're generating HTML with Angular, it should be valid. Something else that's happening is, and this is, okay, there is a parenthetical here for a reason, but let's say just having valid code. It turns out your web browser is not one web browser. Your web browser is 2 or 3 completely separate web browsers because compatibility. There's a lot of websites out there, or there were, or there continue to be, that expect web browsers behave like web browsers behaved in 2004 or whatever. So if you're somebody making a web browser, you want to be modern, right? You want to support all the modern things. You want, you know, the main element to work, and you want all the style sheet and all the JavaScript stuff to work in the modern way and be right. But, you know, the Bank of America website from 2004 or whatever assumed something about web page display that was like, okay, Internet Explorer version, whatever version was current when I'm telling this story, does this thing that's not exactly what the standard said, but it's what it did. And they assumed that every web browser would do that. And if you're making a web browser, you don't want, if pages suddenly break, it's your fault. Even though people have not upheld their end of this bargain and given sort of broken and weird and just wrong code, you can't break that old page, or you don't want to. It's sort of unpopular. So what has happened in web browsers, just as time has gone on, is there's Quirks mode that is, okay, look, we will do our best to make your web page look the same as it did in 2004, because that's what you maybe expect on some old website. I don't even know if I can, I don't know if I can try, like, I don't even know if I can do enough to throw a browser into Quirks mode. I'm not even sure I know how. I suspect that might do it. Like, I think if I don't have a doc type, it will be thrown into Quirks mode. So in the before here, if I look at the page info, it's being rendered in standards compliance mode is modern mode. If I reload with the broken thing, in fact, you'll notice the heading moved, because again, the Quirk, I suspect, yeah, Quirks mode has a different default style sheet to maintain compatibility with 15-year-old web browsers. And again, some combination of those things I deleted. Oh no, it didn't change. All right, sorry about that. I was wrong. That the heading didn't move. But anyway, you will see things like that occasionally. That was a really long-winded way to say you want this one. You want the modern, everything works in the modern way and doesn't behave like a web browser from possibly before you were born. If you have just basically valid-ish code, you'll get the new one, which is what you want. So good start. All right, I guess I've done the demo here, I think, as completely as I'm going to do. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Well, how did that break all of my syntax highlighting? Anyway, you know, just doing something like this, like misspelling a thing, is, of course, it's easy to do, and this is a way to find that problem. Oh, maybe I didn't hit undo enough times. Anyway, yeah, that. No, I guess we're just not syntax highlighting anymore. But anyway, so validated, well, it'll just find these things that you should have done right, but you didn't. And what are you going to do? Why are we not seriously syntax highlighting anymore? Come on, text editor. This is what I pay you for. Okay. So again, this is a blanket expectation for me. I think if you're giving me HTML code, it should be valid HTML code. I don't think that's too much to ask. Okay, let's carry on. I guess I haven't thought too carefully about how long this lecture is going to be. It's going to be as long as it's going to be. I won't push the full like 3 hours minus 10-minute break. Well, frankly, I won't usually, and I certainly won't today. First half of the night. Okay, all right. I'll talk a little bit about part 2 here. So part 1, when it went by, was semantic markup. So we've done that, and again, I didn't talk about sort of the details of markup here, but hopefully the basics are something you've seen before, and spend some time with a reference, or maybe refine a little bit what you understand of HTML and some of the details in there. Maybe since I'm looking at it, there are 2 lines here I didn't explain. I will talk later about character sets in more detail than you probably want, but this is to say, this is how is my text encoded into bytes. So when I saved this thing, implicitly I had saved things as UTF-8 encoded text. This is, again, just make sure me and the web browser are on the same page about how to turn bytes back into characters. The meta viewport is basically, I understand that different size devices exist. Again, like for compatibility, mobile browsers will sometimes try to make a page look like a desktop page because they think that it looks like it has a fixed width and it's an old page, and this is basically your way to say, as a web developer, I understand that different size web pages exist. And I have, and in fact, by the way, this is another thing the developer tools will do. This guy over here. Whoops. There. I can say this is a there we go. This is an iPhone 6, 7, 8 sized screen. What will my page look like? And obviously not like, this is not an iPhone 6, 7, like it's approximately that size screen. I can arrange have it throttle the network so that pages will load, again, approximately as fast as a nice 3G signal or whatever. How will things look in that scenario? This isn't as good as looking at it on a phone. Again, it's never going to be perfectly accurate, but at least you can do something. Better than nothing at all. Anyway, and I guess the other thing, the title for a page is the thing that appears here in my tab. So demo page for lectures is the string from here. All right. So I've been, loudly ignoring, I guess, appearance up to this point. And that's what HTML is about. HTML is about markup and semantics, meaning, and content, right? So get all the content in there, make it, say what it's for, say what it's about, say what all of these pieces are for. And then, well, as part 2 here, I'm going to worry about how it looks. So I'm going to have some style information here. So relative URL. So I'm expecting here a file named style.css in the same directory. This is probably the easiest way to do that. And the link element. Specifies a related document. So this is a related document. Its relation is, it's my style sheet, and here's its URL, is what I just said there, which again, I learned because I read that page at some point in my life. So now we have this, we have a compatibility problem, but now we have this way to say something about how things should look. So what were some of my annoyances back? Like, I'm annoyed by this font, I guess. So that's a KBD element. I guess if I'm going to say a font here, I want something like this. I have this compatibility problem between browsers, and I can say things like, there we go. I can give some fallbacks. So of course I can do a whole like Google Fonts thing and have the browser download the font, but I can also just find a bunch of things that look reasonably nice and are very widely compatible. Wow, they've really said a lot of, I'm just gonna, yeah, okay, that's the substring of that I actually want. That. Oh geez, no, it's not. I wanted more quotes there, don't I? I thought these quotes were required for multi-word font names, but maybe not. I'll go with it. Okay, so I'm willing to bet, because these people have done some homework on, Lucidia Console is available on Windows, but not Macs. But they've given this list of fallbacks. So it's like this, or if not that, then this, else if this, else if that. One of these fonts is pretty probably available for everybody. And there's this monospace fallback, one of the 5 generic font families. So let's see if I do that. How does my KBD change? That looks better. Like that's more sort of consistent with what's around it. Hey, maybe I'll change everything else too. What else we got? I like a good sans serif font. So let's say everything. Everything else is that. Oh, right, this. Yeah, okay. I think I'm cool with that. I guess I can have my other, the other things that I expect to be in a monospace font. Is that not a, oh, it's not a pre, it's a, what is it again? It's a code example, okay. So the dot is a select by class. So div class equals code example will be selected by that. Okay, better. Good enough for now. I do have a compatibility problem. So HTML has not been in like radically fast development in the last like 10 years or whatever. It's pretty stable. So most web browsers are pretty fine with like, the existence of a main element or whatever. CSS has, you just have more compatibility worries. I have good faith that the font family CSS property works in different browsers because, well, I've been using it personally for a long time. This is one where you sometimes do have to either kind of know what works or be willing to scroll around in a reference. So let's see, I just used font family. I hate the layout of this page. But again, this is the Mozilla CSS reference, font family. Okay, so yeah, you use it this way. There are these generic families that should be available everywhere. There's a few other things that have been added a little more recently. But the thing I want to talk about here is, if you keep scrolling, this compatibility deal where, okay, so Chrome has basically every version of everything supports font family, but can I use this font family system UI, whatever that means? Again, I bet I could figure out what it means by default user interface font. So basically my OS font, if I want things to blend. So this is a little more subtle, right? Like Firefox 92. What Firefox was I using? 91. Okay. Oh, so that's, yep. No Internet Explorer, Chrome, Edge. I'm kind of surprised about how recent that is. Anyway, yeah, I probably want to be pretty cautious if I say font family system UI. And then what else do we got here? I was trying to think what else might be a little more recent that I can kind of quickly pick out, like the grid layout, say. Again, scrolling. Yeah, so pretty widely compatible. I don't know what Edge 16 means. I don't know how recent that is, or if like what fraction of users might have it, but I have a tool for that. The caniuse.com. So can I use CSS grid layout? This is basically the same information presented differently, but it does have this usage relative view where like there's whatever percent, I can't quite read there, of early Chromes. Some people using Opera Mini, a few people using old Internet Explorer. They won't be able to deal with these CSS grid properties. This is a really handy tool to be able to very quickly look and say, I mean, Opera Mini is a non-smartphone browser. It's not hugely, like, it was 1.5% of global use. But again, are you willing to make a choice that breaks your page for 1% of your potential customers? It's a choice you have to make. This is, again, when it comes to CSS, those of us who are old timers and use old-fashioned CSS are fine. If you're going to be all modern and use modern CSS, well, you're going to have a few more questions of compatibility. So basic selectors. So again, this is every H1 element, every paragraph element. So every keyboard element, every code element. The dot is a class selector. So that is everything that has class equals code example. That's every div that has class equals code example. So if you want to select just a specific tag with that class or anything with that class, do I have anything with ID in it? Like, I don't know why I would want to select that, but I can. I can select by ID. And then, so I don't know, these are probably the ones that are in my head. One tag within another. So this is if I have emphasized text anywhere inside an H1, or if I have emphasized text that is a child of an H1, is a direct descendant of, not nested a few levels inside. Sometimes you need one or the other. Maybe most obviously something like a list item that is a list item of an unordered list versus a list item of an ordered list, because of course I might have an ordered list that's inside an unordered list, or the other way around. Like I might have these things kind of nested in various ways. This is the child selector. So I want the list item that is immediately inside an unordered list, not somewhere deeply nested. I want just the one at that top level of the list, because I want to say something like that. Ordered list should have a different style or a different like bullet type than unordered lists. I would say these are the ones, this is like 90+% of my CSS selector usage. There are other ones. There are others that I think, again, it's worth knowing they're out there. And in the CSS reference, down at the bottom somewhere, there it is. Like, again, I hate that this is like every CSS concept all on one page, good luck. But this is some basics, and then like here are all the properties. So you can say border image source for an element if you want, or you can, you know, all those things. And then there's this whole other section of selectors. So yeah, the tag selector, the class ID selector, you can select by attribute, which I think I said there. Yeah, so if I wanted to do this, I can select just something that is in French. I think for this example that I've been working on here, I have this class equals other lang. I think what I would want to do if I'm going to sort of stay with that example, I think I just want to select that class. And like I said, things that are in another language just are conventionally italicized. So I can say that as long as I'm sort of, you know, I'm saying I'm doing this when I write my markup. I'm being semantic and kind of squeezing that meaning in there. Now, what else? Yeah, adjacent syllable. So a paragraph that comes immediately after an H2, but not after another paragraph or after a list or something like that. This like, you know, I would often use this for something like this, right? So if I'm in a situation where I want, like, if a paragraph comes right after a heading, I want to kind of tighten up that space. I want there to be less top margin on my paragraph when it's right after a subheading. That's something like this. What else? Okay, let's see what else we got in the reference here. I've never used a general sibling combinator to my knowledge. I have used pseudo classes and pseudo elements. Let's close a few tabs there. Okay, so what's happening here is pseudo classes are like, again, like subtypes of an element. So this is a particular kind of button, but not one that I created by saying class equals. This is one that the browser can kind of detect on its own. So a button that has the mouse being moved over it right now is button : hover. Or an element that is in a certain language, whether it has the lang equals attribute there or on some parent, I could select like any span that is in French, which is, I think, any quote that's in French is my example here. So yeah, these are sort of automatic, right? Provided by the browser. The browser knows, okay, this is this specific kind of, it's a read-only input, or it's the first child, or whatever. So all of those things. The pseudo elements are, it's like you put some markup around something, except you didn't have to do it, the browser did it. So something like, maybe selection is a good example. So how do things look when I sort of highlight the text like that, like I do all the time when I'm typing? So the default is obviously orange background. If I come over here and I say, so anything that is like the element that has been selected, so the user has dragged over, the browser knows what part of the page that is. It's almost like the browser is inserting markup for free or something. It automatically knows what selection means, and it's going to apply that style to it. Why not? Why not? I'll leave it. So yeah, those pseudo classes and pseudo elements are, you can get a lot done. Again, you can do, I think, a lot more in CSS than a lot of beginners sort of realize. You can select the first letter. So you can do something like if you want like a drop cap. So occasionally you will see in printed text something like the first letter of like a chapter is like really big and ornate or something. Let's see if I can do that without having prepped my example. So this is, if I have a paragraph that I guess is the start of a section immediately after an H2, I want to select just its first letter. And let's see if I have selected it right first. Apparently not. Wait, I think I want this. It's the first letter that's inside. Oh, right, that's not an H2, that's why. It's an H1. There we go. Okay, so I have a paragraph that occurs immediately after an H1. That's the adjacent sibling selector. And then I have the pseudo element that is the first letter inside that element, and I can style it. And now I have this chance to make this one letter be kind of ornate because I'm trying to imitate some old novel appearance. Yeah, I think first letter, I don't remember the last time I used it, but I guess I'm glad I know it's there. Oh, thank you, past me, for including this. One, apparently I've styled keyboard elements nicely in my slides. There's some, border around them so you can see. These browser tools that I keep using, like by default, they appear down here. Like I've moved them just in this browser so I don't like my screen real estate is precious when I'm giving a lecture, so I'm kind of doing that in a separate window. For the moment, I guess probably the thing I care about the most is that I can come over here. I can say, well, I want to select this thing specifically that will find it. So in the page, like this is the live HTML as it actually exists in the browser right now. There's that aside tools. And like I have this permalink here that doesn't appear in the slides, but it does appear here. There's some JavaScript that turns it into this link, just so you can kind of conveniently link yourself to that section of the page if you want. Then once this exists, what I see over here is, well, the font size. And why does it have that font size? It's because this, like slides.css on line 7, says font size 2M for that element. So again, like, why does it have the style? Well, something in here says, like I have slightly bumped up my word spacing for my slides just because I wanted to. I thought it looked a little better. I don't know if I can have all these things appear simultaneously on the thing. If I want to, I can, where'd it go? There it is. I can turn that off. So I can like temporarily disable that CSS rule, or I can modify it in place. I can, where'd it go? How did I immediately scroll away from that? It's here somewhere, right? Cursor. Yeah. Well, it is what it is. Anyway, if you want to, you can do something like, say in here, like I can just sort of edit on the fly and say, well, what if we didn't? What if we had, instead of line height 1.2, what if we had a 1.5 there? What would that look like? Well, not so different, probably because my H2 is only a single line, but you can experiment with those things with a live page if you want, play around, see how things look. The other thing that, like, I find it really hard to type in this editor because Emmet's not installed, to type HTML. Emmet is a tool that lets you type effectively the CSS selector, press a special key, and have it expand to the HTML. Like this editor has it because it's the one I actually usually use for my my HTML editing. Where's this page? So this is style.html. Again, you probably can't see this for the font size, but I can type div.special, press tab, and it expands to div class equals special and div, which is a lot less keystrokes, and without it, my life loses all meaning. You want to look for that in a text editor, if at all possible. Many text editors have this thing, or have a plugin that you can install. One of the other things that sort of appeared there when I was looking at my developer tools, again, I'll look at this page. I will look at, well, yeah, let's look at that LI. So okay, what I have here is a section, which is, you know, like each one of these sections is basically one of the slides that appears in the slide view. That contains an H2, which is hidden on the non-slide view of things, and this unordered list. So yeah, I'm looking at this first list item. Why is it laid out the way it is? Well, one of the things I see here is it's got 5, it's displayed in pixels here, top margin, and it has this width and height. But what do all those mean? And what they all mean is basically this picture. Every element in HTML is sort of contained in a box, like it's drawn on the screen as a box. If it's a block level element, that box is sort of by default the full width of the page. If it's inline, again, part of a paragraph or whatever, it's sort of whatever, you know, width that text takes. But these are things you can start playing with in CSS. The width and height mean probably not what you naturally think they do. You can modify that, but the default thing that width and height mean is the actual text itself, not including all of this other stuff. Outside of the actual element itself is the padding. So this is the distance between the element and the border. It's the part that contains background color. So like, you know, I have a like sort of light gray background here just to see, but let's do this by way of a demo. I'm gonna take the H1. So it has, well, whatever margins and padding it has naturally, like in the browser default style sheet. You know, let's look at it. It has some top and bottom margin. So what I see here is what's you know, after all the calculations the browser does about, you know, how big the various units are. So this is just pixels on screen. No padding, but some margin. Okay. I'm going to start by getting rid of that. Maybe I wanted that, maybe not. I'm going to give it a border. So how wide the line is, what kind of line it is, and what color the line is. So the padding is the space in between the text and the border, and which is the same as where the background color appears. So if I want either more background color or I want my border to be farther away, that's padding. So that describes that space. And then the space outside of the border and background color between this and the next element is the margin. So I have no margin here. Like there's probably some margin on the body or the HTML itself that's spacing this away from the outside of the window. Let's find out. Let's see if my theory is correct. I guess I could also look in the developer tools to see where that space comes from, but yeah. Maybe I want that, maybe I don't. Maybe I want, again, a little bit of space there. This unit I'm using, the EM, is the font size. So this is half a font size worth of space in whatever element. So half of the H1's font size is how much padding I added there. So if I want a little space, like I want a little space on top, or a lot of space on top, I can give a top margin. Again, I think these terms, like especially width and height, don't mean what people naturally think of those words meaning. You can change width and height to refer to out to the edge of the paddings and the border by changing the what is it, box property or whatever. But this is a default, just so you know. And then again, the margin determines how close other stuff can be. Okay, I mean, I mentioned length there a little bit. And by the way, this thing that I just did, this is a very common, like this is something I find myself doing a lot. Just set the margin and padding to 0. Get rid of whatever's in the browser's default style sheet, then continue on from there. This is, again, a very, very common thing that I find very useful. Just because, you know, why is there space there? It might be margin space, it might be padding space. Get rid of them both and then add back the space you want. It can be a very useful, very, you know, easy, basic CSS thing to do. Do I want to get into CSS lengths today? Probably not. I mean, this is the, like, these units of measurement that can be used in CSS, like EM, again, the font size. They come up in a bunch of different spots, and you know what? I just don't feel like talking about them today. I think that's enough for an intro lecture. Have a look at weekly exercise 1. It's not due this week, but I don't think it's due this week. It's due whenever it says on courses, but you can start it now. Why not? The first exercise is really about HTML. So I've said all the lecture stuff I'm going to say about it. Have a look. Otherwise, I think that's a good place to stop. Hopefully this style of lecture is working for people. Otherwise, I will see you in the next lecture or in office hours or in the discussion forum or whatever it is. Have a good week.